From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. And now, here they are, Jim and Rich.
Ah, that music just gets me in the mood every time we do this.
What kind of mood?
I don't know yet. I'll have to tell you. I'll have to figure that out. I haven't finished my coffee yet. Off and running with another edition of the Armchair Experts. Leon and Massaro here, like it or not. John DeVita in the other room, spinning the dials. John, you doing good? Everything good? You all right?
Very good.
All right.
Very good.
Richard, nice of you to stop by today.
I'm mesmerized by this clock over here. I'm a clock watcher now.
You're so easily distracted.
It's always an honor to be with the voice of the Rebels, Mr. Jim Leon, and the Hall of Famer John DeVita.
Oh, you're always.
You know what, Jim?
You're easily distracted.
I told Andy and Bill this morning. I said, I'm going to hit Jim with something first thing in the morning.
Here it goes.
I want to see
another soccer. Yeah, John's crossing. John's just crossed himself, and I'm expecting some other famous soccer player died.
I like to talk about the relative merits of Duke Sabadong and Nino Valdez in the heavyweight division. All time. Where would they rank?
All time greats.
All time greats, definitely. But no, okay. Seriously, folks.
What seriously?
My man Jimmer Fredette scored 17
points.
Night.
He's getting ready for the playoffs. So I guess we'll start by talking Bulls basketball.
Since you've
opened it up.
He could be getting ready for the playoffs. Who did they play? The Magic, was it last night?
They played the Magic, beat them 108-95. Magic, I believe I heard this morning the Magic ended the season 4-37 on the road.
Whoa. Goodness gracious!
Yeah,
man, that's rough.
Yeah, that's tough. Interesting. Good game last night. Yeah, Dunleavy with 22 points, Boozer with 13, Noah with 18 points, Butler with a dozen, Fredette with 17 off the bench, played 30 minutes, which is considerably higher than what he's been averaging since he's been with the Bulls because he's only been playing about 10 minutes a game.
Okay. I didn't even know he was playing that much.
Yeah. And Gibson only played 19 minutes last night.
Far
down from his 28 that he's been averaging.
Well, you have to wonder, Thibodeau, I think, in addition to being a really well-respected defensive coach, I think is a guy who really looks closely at the matchups.
Yeah.
So not knowing that much about the Magic, it could be that Fredette was a great matchup for somebody, and Gibson
it was also
not had as good a matchup.
I mean, the other issue was DJ Augustin was not with the team last night. His wife had a baby earlier in the day.
Oh, okay.
So that was the reason Fredette got the time.
Those are the types of things where you can, a guy can have an opportunity and get his foot in the door. That's a nice opportunity for Fredette to show his stuff, and he did a good job.
Yeah, I
think he shot 7 for 14.
Yeah,
and I know that he was at the free throw line at least once that I heard on
twice.
So
2 for 2.
2 for 2. He's a 90% free throw shooter, which is always good in crunch time.
I think this is a good person to be to make sure come off the bench, fill in as needed. I think you're right. I mean, he could be a big plus. Now the Bulls are still tied with Toronto.
Toronto won last night, right?
Toronto won last night, so they're still tied. But the Raptors have the tiebreaker right now. So what needs to happen is the Bulls need to beat Charlotte, and the Knicks need to beat Toronto in the final game of the season for the Bulls to be the 3 seed in the East.
Well, I try to remind people of when we say things that are right on the money, and that happens pretty often here. But you know what? It does, really.
We are the armchair experts.
But I'll tell you, I'm going to remind them, too. I think that early on, if you would have said to me in December or early January that the Bulls were going to be in the position they're in now, where they're well above 500, and actually, I think I read someplace that since they lost to Sacramento, and I don't remember what the date of that game was, they had been like 24-8 since that time. So they have really, now that could be 25-9, because I think that was prior to the last two games, the loss to the Knicks and the win last night. But I'll tell you what, they have done a phenomenal job, and without their best player, Derrick Rose, and after
Trading
the trade
away-
of Luol Deng.
Trading away Luol Deng when everyone figures they're going to
I have
tank.
to ask you this, though, Jim. I respect Luol Deng. I think he's a very good player, and I think the players, when they talk to them about this, respect him as well. But it's an interesting thing that they have actually played better without Luol Deng than they did play with him. And I don't think that should be a negative on Luol Deng. I think he's a very good player, but I just think it's an interesting thing.
I think it's a positive when you talk about when you look at the individuals on this team and how they play as a team. They looked at, okay, we're facing adversity. We don't have our best player. He's gone for the year for injuries. Our next best player, he's been traded away. We're not happy about that, but we are going to pull together and play as a team, which is exactly what they have. Noah's been a beast.
Yeah. Well,
Dunleavy has come through. I'm not a big Carlos Boozer fan, but he's had his moments too.
Well, Carlos Boozer is a steady as you go type of guy, and they may have paid him more money than people like to see him being paid, and that's probably true. But I don't think you can deny that he's a very solid basketball player, comes from a good college program, and I think people over-expect what he can do, but I think what he does really well.
Well, I think under the circumstances when he was signed by the Bulls after the whole LeBron James campaign and contract pitch, and he was the second best. He came to Chicago with a lot expected of him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think back, it just popped in my head, the thing that everyone expected a lot of somebody because he was signed to replace somebody. You go way back when Bobby Hull jumped to the WHA and the Hawks signed Dale Talon.
Yeah, that's
to replace
true.
him. So everybody expected so much of Talon, and Talon was a good hockey player, but a journeyman.
Now, the interesting thing when you use that as an analogy, one thing that people don't realize is that it was the Hull, Martin, Pappen line, I think it was at the time. The year after Bobby Hull left, they had their biggest year as a group in terms of points and goals and whatnot. And I'm thinking similar things. You lose Derrick Rose, you lose Luol Deng, so you lose quite a bit of production there. But you know what? Somebody obviously has stepped up their game and picked. Maybe not even stepped up their game. Maybe their game was already there. Got the opportunity to step in and show their game off, and so those two guys have been replaced pretty amply. I'm not even sure, Jim, that from what little bit I saw of Derrick Rose at the beginning of the season, that the Bulls would have had a much better record even had he remained healthy. What do you think?
I really don't. I don't know either. I really don't think they would have been that much different. Of course, then again, the East was pretty awful this year. I think they're right about where we would have expected them to be, about a third seed, about a fourth seed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I guess if you're the fourth seed, you open up with Brooklyn. If you're the third seed, you get Washington. What do you prefer?
I would prefer Washington just because we already did the Brooklyn number. The other thing is, I think I was reading an article about the Nets in the Wall Street Journal the other day, and they talked about how they really gave the Heat problems in some of the games they played with them strictly because of their length. and they have a very tall team. I can't remember who it was. It was one of the guys who quite a few years ago had come out of high school to play, was playing guard for them at 6'7", and they cited some other players. I'm not familiar with all their players, but they the Nets, this is, have some length to them. Garnett's there. Pierce, of course, is a dangerous player. Darren Williams. So I prefer the Wizards. I don't think they're as good a team, to be honest. I think the Nets potentially, even though we beat them last year, hey, there's always that get back at you factor too.
Sure.
So I'd rather see us play the Wizards than the Nets.
You think Tom Thibodeau deserves consideration as Coach of the Year for the job he did with this team? I think so.
I don't know who else would you have. I would say, Greg Popovich is always in the running.
Yeah.
Let's be realistic. The Spurs, their good players are all getting up there, and they're still doing a very good job. The other guys, to me, would be the Miami Heat coach, Eric Spoelstra, obviously, and
Frank
then
Vogel.
Frank Vogel from the Pacers.
Yeah.
And other than that, I don't know who really stands out. So
who's coaching the Clippers? Is that
Rivers?
Doc Rivers. That's right.
Doc Rivers.
Clippers. I mean, you're looking at the West. You're looking at the Clippers with the 3 seed, San Antonio with the number 1 seed. Still, you still got a little bit of a fight down there with between Dallas, Memphis, and Phoenix for the 8th spot, or for the final spot. 2, 4, 6, 7. Yeah. Dallas has got a half-game lead over Memphis and a game and a half over Phoenix.
Well, I know that in the off season we're going to be looking at making changes. And yesterday you told me you were a gay guy, a Rudy gay guy. Are we going to see Rudy Gay come to Chicago?
I'm not a big gay guy. No. I think we'll take that in the draft. I'm just not a big gay guy.
Okay.
No. Okay.
That's good. I'm glad.
Okay.
I'm still going to keep this chair in between us, though.
John's wiping his brow. John was ready to go. I'll leave you two guys alone.
I'm wiping my brow, and Kevin's pounding on his heart.
That's
so much for our award Monday night.
really.
We just blew that one, didn't we? Okay, so did they make it out of the East? They get to the finals. They get to the Eastern Finals. What do you think?
There's no way. I don't.
They're not getting out of the East.
To the Eastern Finals.
You think you don't think they could have a chance to get to the Eastern Finals?
No, I don't. No, really.
You think they'll lose in? You think they'll lose in the second round?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
All right.
The other thing I was going to say, Jim, and we talked a little bit about this, is
in what we laughingly referred to as show prep last night.
You talk about Rose and Deng being out and other guys maybe stepping up. I think one of the things we were going to talk about was the Hawks, and the fact that Kane and Taves have been out have really opened up an opportunity for some younger guys to come in and show what they can do.
Well,
and I'll tell you, Jeremy Morin has been impressive. But go ahead.
I
looked at some stats.
I was just going to say anything. If there was anything else, there was one thing before we got off of basketball.
Oh yeah.
And I'm embarrassed to say after I read this, after I read an article here that. Adidas with their big contract to Derrick Rose after his 13-year, $185 million endorsement in 2012, the company just signed the Trailblazers' Damian Lillard to an 8-year contract. I just have one thing. I'm embarrassed to say I have no idea who Damian Lillard is.
I don't know either. I thought the big guy.
He was the NBA. He was the NBA Rookie of the Year in 2013.
No kidding. Wow.
So
that one passed right over.
Wow. We got to start. We got to start following teams other than our own local teams here.
I
Our own
told
local
you,
guys.
we better start to do some studying here, Jim.
I think that's
Otherwise,
our
we're gonna be in
that's
big
going to be our off-season basketball project. We have to start memorizing rosters and watching everything.
Yeah,
All right. So, Richard's prediction: Bulls don't get out of the East.
yeah, that's my prediction.
Richard's prediction: they don't even get to the Eastern Finals.
That's my prediction.
All right. Now start talking hockey talk.
Hockey. What did you find last night? You said you were going to look
Well,
at some stats.
I kind of pulled out the stats because I think we were trying to figure out. Okay, when you get down to your playoff roster in for most of the playoffs, who do you play? Who do you sit?
Mm-hmm. Well, how many players can we suit up? 22, is it?
Good question.
It's in the 20s. I know.
I think
that.
it's in the 20s. I mean, obviously, your goaltenders every night are going to be, your two goaltenders are going to be Crawford and Ranta. You're going to suit up Sharp, Kane, Taze, Keith, Hossa,
Seabrook,
Sad, Brandon
Saad.
Yeah,
probably.
Saad. Shaw,
Oh yeah.
Versteeg, I think
That's
about.
a question. That's
Versteeg-
a possible guy who may sit a few games.
Versteeg may sit some games. Nick Leddy,
Nick Leddy will be suited up.
yep. Marcus Kruger,
Yeah, he'll be suited up.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Jalmerson,
Yeah, of course, definitely.
Smith.
Ben Smith, I'd
Yeah.
say yes.
Okay. Hanzus, that's one of those guys, as I'm
He's
looking
in-
at that, he's one of those guys I would look at that you may want to rotate between him, Peter Regan, and Nordstrom.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Regan.
Regan, rather.
Both of those two guys
Regan.
have Regan and Nordstrom have both earned some time, I think.
Yeah, I think these would be guys I would be looking at as maybe a rotation. Oduya,
Oh yeah, Oduya is one of your top 4 defensemen.
yeah. Bick.
Yeah,
He's been-
Bickle definitely will be there though.
Yeah,
I think.
I know he's had his problems this year,
Yeah,
injury wise. So you may see him as being a scratch in some games. It would not surprise me.
it could happen.
Yeah, Brandon Bolig. Again, that's
He-
another one.
Well, you know what though? I mean, he just got done playing all 82 regular season games. So, but I agree. I mean, you never know what's going to happen in the playoffs.
Morin certainly earned some time in what he's shown.
Mm-hmm.
Roosevelt, that's another one that you're going to see kind of on a shuffle.
Well, I think what's happened too with Roosevelt is Sheldon Brookbank has been really versatile this year. He's
Yeah.
played as a forward. He's played both defense
Yeah.
spots,
Yeah,
and he may have earned himself a spot
yeah.
over Roosevelt. And
Yeah.
that's not to put Roosevelt down because
No.
Roosevelt is certainly a good player.
Yeah. So it would be, there's I think the one good thing about this Blackhawk roster is you certainly have flexibility
Oh, definitely.
with this, and you've got the talent sitting there that if you need to give someone a rest some night, you can do it.
Well, let me throw this one out at you. How about possibly Matt Harvey?
Matt Carey?
Matt Carey, I'm sorry, suiting up for a few of these games, strictly because the games he has played, he's been very, very good at the face-off circle,
Yeah, that's true.
and that's a critical point.
That's true.
And
And he's only played 2 games.
I know.
Yeah, but he has played well in those 2 games, so he could be a good key for a fill-in point if you want to kind of rotate somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You may look at that Bickle, Bolig, and Carey as a rotation at the left side on one line.
Now, let me ask you this: the papers and everybody you talk to are making a huge deal out of the fact that the Blues are coming in on a down streak, but I would say that is not always a true indicator of what a team's going to do in the playoffs. I know they have injuries, and people are concerned about that, but I also know you're a numbers guy, and let's put it this way: if you come into the playoffs and you're on a 6 or 7 game roll, backwards, it's a losing streak. But you are also a team that's gotten over 100 points in the season, right around 115 points. So you're a quality team. what do the numbers say about that? At some point in time, you're going to start to play well again.
At some point in time, slumps are going to end.
Right.
And you never know, what's going to trigger it.
No.
In fact, I'm just glancing and I'm looking at yesterday's Sun Times, and there's a perfect quote in here just to kind of deal with this. Johnny Oduya said yesterday, "I know how it works. Once the drop of the puck happens in the first game, everything else is out the window. It's a whole new season, a whole new start for everybody. It's tough. Obviously, you want to have good momentum going in, but that can change either way in the first couple of minutes in the first game."
You know
what? It's that's truer words have never been spoken.
Definitely, from years of competing and years of seeing exactly those types of things happen. There is such a thing as momentum, and you could have it. But as he said, it could, in a matter of minutes, that momentum can be turned on its head by either a break or the other team just being that much more determined. Momentum is a fragile thing, and there's no guarantee that it's going to keep going, whether it's positive or negative momentum. There's no guarantee when it's going to stop. So I wouldn't, I think the papers are almost thinking, oh, man, we got St. Louis. That's a better draw than Colorado, because Colorado would have been tough. Reality is St. Louis is still going to have home ice. And I think they're still a quality, they were the team that was in first for most of the year. So I don't think you can discount that. The Hawks are going to have a tough first series here, and hopefully we'll survive. But I don't think there's any guarantee just because the Blues are on a 6 or 7 game losing streak and they're banged up. That doesn't mean diddly squat till you get on the ice.
And you're going to have the Blues are going to have two of their better players available they're expected back actually for game one. David Backes and TJ Oshie. But Vladimir Tarasenko, Patrick Berglund, Brendan Morrow are all going to be out. But I think you have two of the better players coming back. So again, it's and what's always the key? What's always the key? What have we heard for years? What's always the key in a Stanley Cup playoff series? Who's your hot goaltender?
That is a huge key.
You get a goaltender who's on a streak, anything can happen. That's the key. I mean, that's a lot of people say that's what triggered the Blackhawks last year. Crawford got hot. What triggered them when they won the 2 years prior?
Niemi.
Antti Niemi.
Yeah. Well, I got to say this too. I mean, you're talking about injured players coming back. We have two coming back, but even though their names are Kane and Taves, you really don't know what they are still. They've been off the ice for a period of time, and there is going to be a period of time to get their bearings, if you want to put it that way. Obviously, they're veterans. They've played a lot over the years. It shouldn't take them that long, but you never can tell. Mm-hmm. And have an injury factor. Right now, you hear a lot about Kane. He's skating, and he's looking okay. So Kane may be all right, but you don't hear much about Taves, and that elbow that's a critical injury there. So who knows what those guys are going to be like, even though they're coming back.
Yeah.
There's just too many things. You cannot assume anything. You can't assume anything by the Blues being on a losing streak and having injuries. You can't assume that Kane and Taves are going to come back and immediately have an impact the way they normally do.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just too many unknowns in this series to really try to nail it down and say, well, yeah, I think the Hawks will advance or not. I mean, it's a toss of the coin as far as I'm concerned.
I think it is. I think it is too, and I'm just looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Forward to it.
The nice thing is that the Hawks have been spoiling us by even the year after the first Stanley Cup, when they were eliminated by Vancouver. That was an unbelievable 7-game series. The one we were down
3-1.
I think
or
we're down
3-zip. I think, yeah.
And so you always like to see the Hawks go deep because they are, there's such drama that's involved with what they do. I mean, they are very, a very dramatic team.
I mean, because you've got the great talent all the way through here. I was just kind of glancing as I see an article here about Marian Hossa, 30 goals, 30 assists this year.
You know, the thing about Hossa, I would say, and I don't see all the players in the league, so I'll say for the Blackhawks, probably the strongest player I've seen on skates since Bobby Hull. I mean, you cannot knock that man off of his skates.
Yeah.
He just is a beast out there.
Yeah.
A bull of a guy. Jim's looking at the clock now.
We
got 35 minutes left. We don't know what we're going to say.
There are, I'm now you got me started on this. If you
look at him. He's
looking,
John.
I don't know.
I started. I got him going, John.
You started something with. You want to know who do you think about whatever tin cans you were talking about in the heavyweight division?
How about Ricky Ataki?
I think I had that.
Never mind.
I had a taki in a Chinese restaurant in a sushi place one night. Isn't that one there? Interesting matchups in the playoffs. In the West, we've got the Avalanche versus the Wild, the Blues versus the Blackhawks. In the Pacific Division, in the West, you got the Ducks versus the Stars and the Sharks versus the Kings. Interesting hockey matchups.
I didn't realize that the Wild was the other team that was involved with the that first four grouping.
Yeah.
So they get the and I think that they. I don't know if I'm not going to say they squeaked into the playoffs, but I think they had a. Were they in solidly, or did they just?
No, I think they snuck in at the end here.
Okay.
If I remember it, I'd have to go back and look at final standings.
Now, did the Wings make it as well? I know that they were right on the edge.
Yes, they are the fourth seed in the Atlantic Division, and they get the Bruins in the first round. In that division, the Lightning and the Canadiens are the 2-3 seed. And in the other division in the East, you got the Penguins versus the Blue Jackets and the Rangers versus the Flyers. Just wanted to see if there was anything in here. Interesting thing, too, that I just want to bring up as we're coming up on there. I've always said that I thought hockey players, just as athletes and the way they act, can be kind of the coolest people on the ice. Just the way they act. Over the weekend, and it was a great video to watch and a great article to read, and just to see the video. Teemu Selanne played his last game, his last regular season game for the Ducks, and at the end of the game, well, first of all, they let him wear the captain's C. He was the Avalanche. The Ducks won the game in overtime. Selanne was named the first, second, and third star. He had 3 hockey sticks that he could give to fans, and you see him skating around and giving them to the fans. Takes a lap around there to acknowledge the crowd, and the crowd was going just absolutely wild. The officials are as he's coming around one time, all 4 officials are waiting for him down in the corner, shake hands and hug him. As he comes around again, all the Colorado Avalanche players are lined up, shaking his hands and hugging him. And as he gets over to where the Avalanche players are ready to go out, he sees Jean-Sébastien Giguère, who's the backup goaltender now for the Avalanche, who's probably going to retire at the end of the year. Both of them were a key part when Anaheim won the Stanley Cup a few years back. And it looked like Giguère either had his cell phone and taking pictures of it or a camera in his hand taking pictures of it. Selanne grabbed him, pulled him out on the ice, held him up and held his arm up and acknowledged the crowd, and the two of them took a lap together. And the crowd was just absolutely berserk. It was just one of the coolest things you see in sports. And I guess that's why we look at this from fans' aspect, that we react emotionally to things we see, and you can obviously see it from players too.
It's interesting.
And Giguère is the last active Hartford Whaler, which surprised me too.
But Selanne was a Hartford Whaler.
He was,
also?
I can't remember if I don't remember if he was a Hartford Whaler. I think he was a Winnipeg Jet.
And
he might be one of the last active of the original Winnipeg Jets.
You told me that story last night, and as I was getting ready to come over here this morning, I'm thinking to myself, I was in one of those moods where
yeah, John's crossing himself.
What is a lot of the fun has been taken out of sports. I think hockey, and we don't talk about hockey that much here on the show, but hockey is probably my favorite sport at this time because the players are most like the players that were around when we grew up. I know the game has probably changed a lot if you really know hockey well.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? Instead of a bunch of fools jumping around because they hit a homer or scored a bucket or made a touchdown, acting like a bunch of bozos, these guys are still, they're still pretty much the way they were 40 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're going to go to break, John?
We going to break the station, John? Yep. We broke it. John is going to put the station back together.
You are listening to Armchair Experts on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center. And now, back to Jim and Rich.
All right, we're back. It's an interesting point. I've kind of looked at that too, and I don't know why. They're hockey players. They all have this very sincere attitude, no matter what. They're, like you said, they're not a bunch of bozos hopping around and jumping around every time they do something. Maybe it's just so many of them are from small towns in Canada, small towns in Europe, and they play that way because of how they were raised. I don't know, but I find it just something I enjoy, and to see something like that the other night when the fans acknowledged him, everybody on the ice acknowledged him for the individual that he was, and then he grabs one of his former teammates and takes him on the lap. And I thought back to the night. I thought back to the night years ago after the Hawks traded Savard to Montreal, and they came in for the first time into the old building. And Savard's and the Canadians, Savard's teammates told him, "You're going to lead us onto the ice tonight." And they came up the steps. The door opened. Savard skated out, and everybody waited. Everybody hung back and let him have his moment.
Yeah.
And of course the stadium went berserk.
Sure. Definitely.
And you see him skating around with his head down because he's got to have tears in his eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, we've lost a lot of...
John is just signaling he was there that night.
John was there that night.
I was there that night. I saw that exactly what you said, Jim. I was my partner Bob and I. We witnessed that.
Yeah, yeah. That's a moment you kind of keep in mind.
And you know something? That's what you call good sportsmanship.
Yep.
Oh, that's for sure.
And you see that so much in the way. You saw a great example of it last year when Rocky Wirtz bought that full-page ad in the Boston paper, thanking the fans of Boston for the way they were treated, thanking the Bruins, complimenting them on a wonderful series.
Well, when you look at if the Stanley Cup is won by the visiting team on the other team's home ice, that team, it's not the same ovation that they would get if they were at home, but they get an ovation, because the fans have the respect for the Stanley Cup,
right,
and the winners of the Stanley Cup,
right.
Now, what I don't to go into the other end of the spectrum, though, Jim, and I talk about this once in a while when we do high school basketball. I love the tradition in the Stanley Cup, especially after the final whistle is blown at the Stanley Cup Finals, when everybody lines up and shakes hands
in every series. In
every series. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a tradition. I like that though, but you know what? Some of this stuff has become so phony. I'm not saying hockey because that's their tradition, but when I see high school basketball, the guys are introduced and they're shaking hands with the referees. and the other coaches.
The other coaches,
and
the scorekeeper.
If we were sitting down there, they'd be shaking hands with us.
They'd be shaking hands with
and
us.
I'm like, okay, enough is enough. Okay.
And I think the other one that I had a good laugh when during the NIT when Clemson beat Belmont on their home floor.
Okay.
And the fans rushed the court.
The Clemson fans rushed the court.
Clemson fans rushed the court. There was a quote from one of the Belmont players who said, one of their fans came up to me as he's jumping up and down. I looked at him and I went, "We're Belmont, man.
We're Belmont, dude. Yeah. What are you getting?
What are you getting all excited for? We're Belmont."
Well, hey, here's a question for you, Jim. If you're a college player, okay, let's say it's hoops, and you beat a team, you're the underdog. Which teams? And I'm saying over the course of years, not necessarily this year, but which teams are you excited about beating?
Beating? Duke, North Carolina, maybe Kansas.
Not Belmont, though.
That's
poor Belmont.
That's like if, they played DePaul.
That was like when, who was it? What was the game years ago? I mean, it was the most lopsided game ever. It was one of the Southern schools. The final was 222-0. I think it was Georgia Tech and some
Cumberland
or somebody. Was it Cumberland?
I think it was Cumberland.
Yeah, I mean that's
the joke. The joke goes at one point in time there was a fumble during the game, and one of the Cumberland players yelled at one of his teammates, pick it up," and he looked at him and said, "Pick it up! I didn't drop it."
I still like the old line that Sammy Baugh got off when the Bears beat the Skins 73-0.
Yeah,
and they had a play that were
dropped in the end zone.
And they asked him, "Well, do you think that would have made a difference in the game, Sammy?" He said, "Yeah." He said the score would have been 73-7.
Yeah,
so.
That's exactly what it would be. Football.
Oh, Jim loves football.
I love football. I mean, we're talking.
Who's that picture of there?
All right, we're talking Aaron Donald now as a possible first-round draft pick for the Bears.
Who the heck is he?
He's a defensive tackle from Pittsburgh. Oh. No player has done more to elevate, and we were talking yesterday about what we laughingly refer to as show prep.
Yeah.
Coffee and talking about other things at Fanny Schmoes and something over at Mariano's. No player has done more to elevate his stock since the start of the 2013 college football season than Pittsburgh defensive tackle Aaron Donald. On the heels of a senior season in which he posted 28.5 tackles for losses, Donald solidified himself as a projected top 20 draft pick by dominating his competition at the Senior Bowl, then turning in the most outstanding performance of this year's NFL scouting combine. Donald would be one of the best players available in this scenario, and he would address a massive need for the Chicago Bears at defensive tackle. Needing a new three-technique interior penetrator to replace Henry Melton, they could get that from Donald, who combines explosive quickness with terrific hand skills and very good strength and power. He is undersized at 6'1 and 285, but he has more than enough attributes to make up for that shortcoming. The Bears have too great of a need on their interior defensive line to pass him up.
Boy, it's really rough when a guy is that undersized, 285 pounds.
But 6'1".
6'1". Oh, geez, yeah.
But 6'1".
He's a shorty.
He's a little fella.
He's a little guy.
He's just a little fella.
Well, if he's good, hopefully the Bears will grab him. I mean, they've addressed a lot of other needs in the offseason.
Now, as I'm looking at this, and I didn't go through the whole report, but two other players that could be available right around that time, especially to address the need at cornerback, Justin Gilbert from Oklahoma State and Darqueze Dennard from Michigan State. That's always a possibility if they want to go cornerback. Also with my guy, Clinton Nix.
Let's pray that he's not on the Bears next year.
Because
we'll never hear the end of this business.
I got my, if he'll be my guy. I mean, it's good enough.
Dennard is not your guy. Well, he's from Michigan State.
Well, that
adopted alma mammy.
Yeah, that's the one I may pull for more. Darqueze.
Darqueze. Plus the Bears. I don't think we've had any Darquezes
We have
on our
not.
team
He would
yet.
be. He will be the best Darqueze the Bears have ever had.
I don't think there's going to be any question about that, Jim.
That's right. That's right.
So this is your whole football shtick. We got what's his name?
That's-
Donald Sutherland.
That's the latest update. Aaron Donald.
Donald.
You think your guy.
Your guy.
think your guy.
My guy.
Clowney is going to be the number one pick. Now
I
Houston.
didn't think so.
You don't think so? You
I
think
said I wouldn't make him the number one pick.
lot of
I've said that
people-
a few times.
a couple of people.
John could attest to that.
John. Did you hear him do that? I don't know.
He
John
doesn't
shrugged
remember.
his
John,
shoulders.
you're not taking notes over there.
Yeah,
Holy
John.
crap.
John, start paying attention to us in here
Look at that.
because
He's
we have
starting
no.
to make like he's going to sleep over there.
We have no idea what we're talking about half the time. We lose track.
Roger Staubach said he would pick Johnny Manziel first.
Johnny Foot because he is Johnny Football,
Yeah, well, I mean Johnny
and that's Roger Football.
and Roger Foot. Well, maybe he reminds him of himself.
Do you think he is a? Do you think Manziel is a good quality number one pick? Now there's some talk that Atlanta's going to try to make a trade up with Houston and get the number one pick, send a couple of draft picks back and forth, and I don't know if there's players involved.
Is
But
that
I did
who
see
has the number one pick?
Houston.
Well, then I'd say Johnny Manziel's got a good, would be a good guy maybe for that franchise because didn't they just trade Matt Schaub to the Raiders?
Yep.
So they could be setting the stage. He's from a Texas school. He's a Texas guy, so Johnny Manziel may be the number one pick. Mm-hmm. Now you say Atlanta's trying to
Trade up for the number one pick, but I think it involves. I can't remember the whole detail on the rumors, but I think it involves a swap of draft picks.
Yeah, I think that'll be a futile cause for them because now that you've laid this whole scenario out for me, I'm thinking now I understand a little bit more about where Staubach's comments are coming from, and I think Manziel would probably be the favorite type of pick for Houston, and yeah, he may end up being the number one pick.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now who are they saying that Atlanta wants to grab by having that number one
Then I think they would look at Clowney
pick? Okay.
as a number one draft pick.
Well, I have my reservations about Clowney because his attitude going into the season, he really didn't want to play that much to protect his draft status.
He wanted to protect his draft status, and there was the whole thing. Well, when you saw one of your teammates, explode his knee the prior year and screw up his possibilities, then I got to protect myself. I got to make my money.
I mean, it's something.
Who cares if you're in school trying to learn something?
Yeah, it's a thought that you could definitely understand, being human, but it's not the way you are supposed to be as a player or a teammate. So that's my objection. To me, it's a self-centered type of attitude, and it just it sends up some warning signals as to if you're a team drafting this guy, if that's his attitude, if he's self-centered, is he going to be a good guy on your team? Not that he's not talented. I'm sure he's very talented.
Very talented. He's very talented, but I would be concerned about the attitude he still brings to the table.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way: we could be totally wrong, but I think that it leaves some question marks there.
I think so too. Just speaking of college football, at that and attitude and what it brings to the table. Thoughts on the Northwestern unionization?
I'll tell you what.
I think
that's
the stupidest thing.
It's a can of worms that you don't want to open. And we were talking about this over coffee one day, and one of the guys was said, "Oh, that's a great thing." I guess the first thing I would say is was it the NLRB that had a rule on this?
Yeah.
How they determine that these guys are employees, I don't know. That's number one. They're not being paid. They're getting a scholarship. There are people who play instruments in the band. There are people who are working on projects in the science department who are scholarship people. So are they employees? I don't think so. They're getting their education paid for by funds that come out from the school. I don't. Here's the other thing, Jim. I don't know that the NCAA makes money as their own entity, but when you get a scholarship from whatever the school is, that money.
Now you
does not
realize
come-
we're only dealing with private schools here now. We're not talking about public schools,
okay.
public institutions. So we're University of Illinois. We're not dealing with that. Just as an example, Northwestern is a private university.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, I don't think is there a difference? A private or a state school, the money is not coming from the NCAA for a scholarship.
Right.
It's coming from funds.
It's coming
in
from
state for a state school. It's probably coming maybe from tax money.
taxes, tuition.
From a private school,
yeah.
it's coming from people who donate or other ways that they raise money.
Mm-hmm.
So the NCAA is not the source for the funding of scholarships. And so my question, the can of worms that you're opening here is now, are the band members who are on scholarship, are the science people who are working in the science and math departments and other areas of education that have scholarships, are they employees? No, they're not employees. In fact, I'm sure that there are some legitimate beefs that you could have as a football player in a big-time football program. I'm not going to quarrel about that. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but you can always find something. The problem I see with this is that, okay, now you have, you got the women's volleyball team, you got the men's wrestling team. They're really not going to be super revenue producing sports.
You've got a successful lacrosse program at Northwestern. It's won national championships. Right?
So are those people going to be covered under this?
That's a good question. And what is this concept of them becoming athletes? What is this going to do to the rest of the sports program? They're just simply because these football players have decided that.
Well, think about this, Jim. If you are now in a position where these guys are employees as opposed to student athletes, now how does that change the coach's way of looking at things? Now I'm not saying every coach. There are big time coaches that you could be on scholarship for 4 years and you'll never see a minute of playing time.
Right.
But when you get a guy, say like a Pat Fitzgerald, who's a real, I think, one of the good guys in coaching, and you up the ante, so to speak, where now winning becomes more magnified because these guys are employees. Now there's that kid that you might actually say you recognize for their good work ethic and practice, and you want to give them a chance to maybe play in a game. Does that guy now never see the field because you're more concerned with with going 10-2 as opposed to 7-5?
Yeah. What does that do?
So,
and I mean, you're dealing with a program here that, especially with Northwestern, where they don't drop athletes unless you really screw up big time, and you have guys that might get redshirted and take an extra year and wind up with a graduate degree. And in the open market, I mean, I saw numbers that said that could be worth $300,000 as far as the educational value of what they've gotten over this period of time.
if they're there 5 years,
And I'm saying,
Definitely.
I'm saying now with that, as we're April 15th, and today as we record this, and it's tax day, what's the tax ramifications for these kids? You suddenly have $300,000. If you're an employee, you got $300,000 worth of income over this 4 or 5 year period.
That's true. You're going to have taxes.
You're going to have taxes. You're going to have Social Security. You're going to have that. You're going to be paying the state, the school's going to be paying into the unemployment. Are they going to be paying into the state university retirement system for this? No, I don't know. No, they don't qualify for SERS. They'd be in a different plan, their own plan up there. Forget it. Yeah, they'll be paying into their own pension plan.
It's a can of worms that I don't think should have ever been opened. But I'll say this: I think the NCAA, probably helped in a big way to make this bed. I have no problem, say, with the NCAA making money from the different sports. I mean, because they are the governing body of collegiate sports, at least the ones that come under the NCAA umbrella. But when they do stupid things, I know there was the controversy last year about Johnny Manziel making money from what was his
autographing
his jerseys
and whatever. And the NCAA finally says, "Oh yeah, that's kind of hypocritical of us.
Yeah,
We're selling this stuff."
When they do stupid things like that, that gets people bent out of shape and causes things like this to happen. The other one that I would say, I remember years ago when I used to travel and I'd be up in Minnesota, and Lou Holtz was the head coach at University of Minnesota. And he got into some problems because he had given a kid a kid who was, again, these kids don't have theoretically, don't have a lot of money that in their pocket. And in reality, a lot of them don't.
Mm-hmm.
But he took money out of his pocket, gave this kid some plane fare, train fare, bus fare, whatever it was, home for either an emergency or a holiday, whatever it happened to be, and ran afoul of the NCAA. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You mean to tell me here's a grown man making a good buck who says, you know what, I'm going to help this kid get home.
Yeah.
And you can't do that because you have coach in front of your name? Yeah. That's ridiculous.
A number of years ago when Joey Meyer was the coach at DePaul, apparently they got a slap on the wrist by the NCAA because, Joey took the kid to McDonald's because he didn't have any money and he was hungry.
There you go.
That was I remember the comment in the paper. I said, you got schools giving players $50,000 to sign on a dotted line. DePaul gets in trouble for a Happy Meal.
Well, see, you are so right about that. There's the other thing. You ever read these things where, they'll say such and such a player, and he's a star player, and I'll just say he's driving around in a Cadillac Escalade.
Right.
He comes from the ghetto. His parents, he may not even have two parents. His mother is on subsistence income, and this guy's driving an Escalade. But nobody really questions that.
No. So we don't worry about that. He's got enough bling.
But
challenge any starlet in Hollywood.
But don't buy that guy a hamburger.
Don't get him a hamburger.
Otherwise, you're in trouble.
Can't do that. All right, we postponed this long enough. Let's talk baseball.
Oh, my God, Jim.
We got 9 minutes left. Let's talk baseball.
9 minutes. That's about all. Okay. Well, you told me yesterday that you thought the Cubs were a really good 4-8.
As I went back and looked at the numbers from a starting pitching standpoint, with the exception of Edwin Jackson and his 6.19 ERA, but then again, I think Jackson started the season with a 6.19 ERA before he threw his first pitch. From a starting pitching standpoint, you've got some effective starters. It's a shame they're not getting any run support. You got Samardzija with a $1.29 ERA. You got Jason Hamill 2-0 going for his third win tonight.
Oh, sure. Just enough for them to get rid of him.
That's right. I'm figuring. I'm starting to look at him, thinking, "Ooh, how many prospects are we going to get back for him?"
We're going to get a lot of prospects.
Travis Wood 2.92, 0-1, but the bullpen is just god awful.
Well, Jim, I think we've talked about this before, but when you have 30-some Major League Baseball teams, and each one of them designates one guy as a closer, I think that's totally ridiculous. You might have, let's err on the side of, let's be conservative about this. You might have 6 really good closers out of 32 teams, and it could be more than that. But let's put it this way: you don't have 32 good closers. For a team to designate a guy as the closer, and then when you read in the paper that if a team decides we're going to go closer by committee, that's the term that is always used. That's like, oh my God, that's the manager is really bungling this. He's going to be closer by committee.
Sometimes it works. Sometimes it works.
Well, let's put it this way: why does having one closer supposedly work? I don't see that.
I don't understand.
Automatically does.
I don't understand why that's necessary. That you just, and it's a valid point. The game has become so situational that maybe you do have to use different guys out of your bullpen as closer, depending on the situation, depending on who's coming up.
Yeah.
You're getting down to that critical time, and you've got three big left, in the ninth inning, 1-run ball game, maybe a man on. You've got 3 left-handers coming up in a row. It could happen. but you got a strong right-hander in the bullpen waiting. Well, bring that, play the lefty-righty matchup, force your opponent to have to make a change, maybe at a critical point.
You know what, Jim? Though you said something early on, making your point that I have to really question. I agree with you that what you said is what's happening. You said the game has become so situational. Now, let me ask you this: if you're facing the 1961 New York Yankees,
you throw the ball and you run and hide behind second base.
You probably have 6 or 7 guys who hit over 20 home runs on the team.
Right.
Then you got situations.
Yeah.
But when you're facing teams like
the
Chicago Cubs, great example. Arizona Diamondbacks, Seattle Mariners. How many situations can you have? Most of the hitters stink.
Oh, most of the hitters think, and most of the managers overmanage.
Right.
And that's that's really the point that I was just trying to make.
Okay.
Everybody has become nobody goes on their instincts. And we've talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got their charts and graphs.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're not a big you're not a big analytics guy.
No, not at all.
And I look at the numbers just because I find the numbers interesting to see in different situations. But I guess I'm like you in starting to look more towards, well, okay, he's been hot lately. Let me leave him in. He's been pitching well no matter what we do. Don't automatically go for the lefty-righty matchup or whatever. Just leave the guy in there. Do we have to have the closer, quote, closer come in to finish off the game just because he is the, quote, closer? Or do we just take a guy and say, okay, Justin Grimm, you've been pitching well. All right. I'm going to put you in here now, and you're going to finish it off no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, you're making a good point. I was talking to my brother on the phone the other day, and he was watching a game with his son.
Yeah.
And his son is 18, 19, 20 years old, whatever. And, they're watching the game, and the eighth inning guy, the setup guy, comes in, and he mows the other side down. Yeah, boom, 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 they're gone. Then they automatically bring in the closer. Now, I don't know what the outcome of that game was, but my nephew's comment to my brother was, why would they not leave the guy who you just saw had great stuff, mowed those 3 guys down like nothing? Why not have him finish off the game? This is the part that I don't understand, because I don't care. You could name the greatest closer ever, and the chances are that guy will close the game.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a chance that maybe that day he doesn't have it. And my point is, I don't have anything really against analytics, because I think they just put numbers to the analytics. I think the analytics have always been there. If you want to, if that's the name you want to call
it's always been there. Yeah,
the managers,
nobody's enhanced it.
Nobody could ever tell me that the manager in 1910 on whatever team didn't know who was good against somebody else. Which pitcher was more. I mean, that's their job.
That's supposed to be their job. That's supposed to be what they do.
But the problem I have is when you see, you got to go with your own eyeballs. When you see a guy has got it, why are you going to go with the guy that you haven't even seen yet? Go with the guy who's got it. Let him finish the game. The guy who finished the 8th, let him do the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the part that just aggravates me, because a lot of times you'll see the guy come in the 9th, and again, we'll go back to the point that not every team has got a strong closer. Now you bring in that closer because that's his designation, and it's not his day. Well, that guy's working the 8th is just shot right in and all the work that's led up to it is just shot right down because this guy doesn't have it that day and he blows the save.
Exactly. I mean, I think we were just talking about this. You talk about why bring in the closer just because he's the closer. I remember going to a game years ago with my wife. Number 1, if you're keeping score.
Number 1, okay. Wife number 1.
Wife number 1, if you're keeping score. But we were at a Cub game, and can't even remember who was playing that day. But Les Lancaster came in to pitch in the 8th inning. Pitched very effectively.
Mm-hmm.
9th inning, they bring in Mitch Williams.
Oh, geez.
First question she asked me is, why are they bringing him in? I said, well, he's the guy that usually closes out the games, and they kind of do this and work up to that point and bring him in. Well, I think Williams probably loaded the bases and pitched himself out of a jam.
They did that a lot.
He did that a lot. And as we were going out, they're announcing, they're giving the final totals, and they give a save to Williams. Mm-hmm. And she says, why does he get a save? I said, well, he faced the tying runs, and so he earned a save.
He put them on. So
he put them on, he faced the tying runs, and he gets a save for that. And she goes, he shouldn't get anything for that.
I agree with her.
He should.
She's
the
right
other
on the money.
Lancaster should get something for that. He should get something else. He should get something like maybe they should call it a hold, which eventually became a stat.
That was a good call on her part.
Yeah, it was a very that was the mathematician in her. So
I know we're almost at the end, Jim, but the thing, as you talk about this, the one point I would make, back when we first started watching baseball, most of the pitchers, I would say probably every pitcher who started out in the minors started out as a starter,
right,
and then
for one reason or another
became a closer,
right.
But when Casey Stengel managed the Yankees, he had a guy named Joe Page, and some people say Joe Page might have been the first closer. There's a lot.
Others say Furpo Marbury, go back into the 20s,
but Joe Page could come in and maybe close out and do the ninth inning. But there was also times when Stengel would bring him in, and because I guess my point would be because he had been a starter originally, he might come in early and do 6 innings if he was effective.
Right. Exactly. All right, getting close to wrapping it up. Next time we get together, we're going to be over at Fannie and Schmoes doing a remote on the 29th of April. We'll probably get started somewhere 9, 10 o'clock range, something like that. John, be prepared. We're thinking we may go 2 hours.
All right.
All right. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next time.
Take care, everybody.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, edited by Stephen Lehman. Our audio engineer is James Rohde, and the executive producer of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network is John Shikanda. This program was pre-recorded on Tuesday, April the 15th, the year 2014. Be safe, and thanks for listening.